They'll create jobs and develop innovative solutions to African problems. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. And as you can see here today, to join us for the discussion, we have 4 experts with us. So I'll start with introducing you to Professor Bankole Sodiopo. And again, I apologize if I do not pronounce the names correctly, but he's a specialist in intellectual property and a professor at the School of Law and Security Studies in Babcock University, where he has served as a former head of department and former dean of law. And oh, sorry, I can hear some background noise. Maybe, yeah. Just to make sure we don't have background noise. He is also the founding president of the Intellectual Property Law Association of Nigeria and the African Intellectual Property Group. He is the current president also of the Nigerian International Franchise Association. Then we also have in the room Odunolowa Long. She's the co-founder and lead counsel at TLP Advisory Africa, Nigeria's entrepreneur-focused law firm. And Odun is also co-founder at DIY Law, an award-winning and leading legal technology startup in Africa. And at TLP Africa, she represents tech startups, innovative-driven enterprises, SMEs, and early-stage investors. Odun is also the regional head for Hague Institute and for the Innovation of Law Innovation Hub in West Africa. We also have Lucia Jimenez Yanguas. Lucia holds a master's degree in information science and law from the Complutense University in Madrid, and she's specialized in intellectual property at the Center for Intellectual Property Studies in Strasbourg. And after working in a law firm in Malaga and at the Spanish Embassy in Senegal, she's and an intellectual property office in Paris, she has been part of the Madrid registry for the international registration of marks at WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, for more than 5 years. And finally, we have Ikemoye Ozozoe. She is the managing partner at Main Gallington Law Firm. She is a legal practitioner qualified in England and Nigeria. Her legal practice focuses on corporate transactions, asset tracing, debt recovery, and intellectual property. And Ikemoye provides general advisory to domestic and international institutions. She is also the associate editor for the peer-reviewed academic journal, Main Quarterly Law. Okay, so you can see that we have amazing panelists today. Without no further ado, we will start with some key questions for our panelists. Again, thank you panelists for being here as well. I will start with a question for Odunolowa. When discussing about the support of early stage entrepreneurs, what do you think is their main idea about IP? What have you seen in your experience that early stage entrepreneurs think about IP?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here to have this conversation. So working with, for every entrepreneur startup, there are different concerns and there are different needs. But one of the most common things that we have, that I've discovered from experience is that I think the starting stage, starting most entrepreneurs, when they want to, when they have an idea, when they want to protect an IP, they come and they say, okay, I have this idea and I want to protect it. I want to protect it. And the first response usually is, okay, in what form have you executed it? Is it in writing? Is it a design? Is it an invention? And sometimes, many times, they haven't even done about it. It's still at the conceptualization stage. So one of the things we always have to first explain is, the protection only lies for what has been executed. So have you executed this in form of an invention, or have you written it somewhere, or is it a trademark? So I think one of the first things that needs to be, emphasized is that ideas can't be protected, but only things that have been executed can be protected. So that's one of the most common things. And of course, I think another challenge that I will add is IP is relatively expensive. And because of that, entrepreneurs are not quick to want to protect their IP because although it's an integral part of what they do, they would rather do the things that are like they feel will obvious, the more tangible things as against the IP.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that for all the hubs that we have in the room, it's quite relevant to understand as well, as you mentioned, like what is the thinking of the entrepreneurs, and like how can they support them when they are like having this type of ideas. Just to remind our hubs here, like if you have questions for the panelists, like please put them in the chat. There's a Q&A, like a chat that you can use, and we will take all the questions at the end of the discussion. So please feel free to ask any additional questions to our panelists, and we will take them after. So thank you very much. Now I'll move maybe to Lucia. And since you are representing WIPO here today, we want to know more about how is IP protection, if IP protection is the same in all countries, and are entrepreneurs immediately protected internationally? How does this work for entrepreneurs wanting to protect themselves in their country, but also in other countries?
Okay, well, thank you, Nuria. Thank you all of you for having me there. I'm very happy also to be there. So as Mr. Longe or Longe, I don't know if I pronounce it well, already pointed out, the intellectual property, or IP, as we used to call it, refer to creation of the mind. Why is it? So everything from work of arts to inventions, computer programs, trademarks, and any other commercial sign that you can think of. So what happened is she pointed out that once people have intellectual property, have create, and they want to use this design, this invention, or this trademark, they need to register this. And I will explain why it is important with an example. So imagine Sally, who is based in a region which is particularly reputed for the production of highly quality honey. Anywhere, let's say, for example, for specific combination of flora, climate, and traditional know-how of the local population. And Sally is thinking with her honey to operate in more than just one market, selling her product or services, or either franchising them, IP rights, and the know-how, not only in her country, but beyond borders. What's happened? That IP rights are territorial. This implies that they're usually only protect in the home country or the region where the protection has been applied of or registered. So the protection is very important for IP for the export market. So it's crucial to enjoy the same benefits of protection abroad as we enjoy on the domestic market. So you should consider applying for IP protection well in time, so well before you export or license the product. And why you should protect the IP rights? There are 5 reasons for that. So first, the most important is give you an exclusive right to prevent unauthorized copy or imitation of your products. The second, the IP right will also help you to strengthen your competitive position in the market. Third, very important, the profitability. So the IP right help you to return the investment you made in marketing or in creating the product. Fourth, you can also create and earn revenue for the IP sales and the licensing. You can license a product and make others to produce your products according to your instructions. Finally, you can stop others using, making, selling, or importing goods and services without your permission. And this is very, very important. So let's continue a little bit with the example of Sally. And let's say that Sally has a trademark, for example, by Sally. At the national or regional level, she can obtain the protection through a registration. So she filed an application for registration with the national or regional office, trademark office, and she pays a fee. And as I say before, the trademark will confer a territorial right, a national or regional right. So because I say they are territorial, so at the international level, you have two options. Or you go market by market, you go to the different offices, or you use WIPO for the trademark. You can use the Madrid system. So the Madrid system is just a cost-effective solution for registering your trademarks worldwide. And WIPO also what offers is a global service for protecting intellectual property across borders and resolving IP disputes outside court. So it's like for internalizing your product after the national level, WIPO offers the next step, which is the export the national level. So WIPO will have you with the internationalization of your IP rights. And well, if you have questions, then do not hesitate to ask it in the chat. So that's from my part. I hope I have replied to the question.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Lucia. And I think that we can take like some additional questions. I'm sure like some of our participants here today might want to get like more details on like how to go about with this process and so on. So we will be happy to take those questions after. Maybe now I'll move to Professor Bankole Sotiopo. And as Professor, from your experience, what is your key message to future entrepreneurs when protecting IP, and how do you support them to integrate IP into their business plan when you are like working with entrepreneurs at a university level?
Thank you very much. I think the first thing I'd like to say is the importance of the ownership of the rights. So in many countries, there are rules that govern who owns. And often the rules often allow the owners, the employers and the employees or the people who are commissioned to do the works to have written agreements that bind them. However, if there's no written agreement, you find out that some countries like in Nigeria, the owner of the rights for inventions is the employer. The owner for the rights to copyright will be the employee. And so if you are an employee, or if you are the owner of your business, then you need to decide who owns the rights, because it's only those who own the rights who can apply for the patent, one. Then two, only the owners of the rights can exercise rights. They are the ones that can restrain other people from using the works. They are the ones that can license and so on. So you need to sort that out. Otherwise, you find out that you have been, you've created a series of things with the people who are working for you, the team, and the law may vest the rights in the people who are working for you rather than in you. So it's important to get that right. And the next thing I'd like to say is, as you're starting out, even though, like Longa said, you could feel that it could be expensive to obtain the rights, to register your rights. However, it's so important that you should try and register, particularly what is the name of the product or the service that you are concerned about. That name, that brand, do you want to give it a logo that is associated with it? You need to work that out in such a way that it is distinct, it is peculiar. So it must not describe the nature of the goods or the services. Otherwise, many trademark laws will not allow you to register them. So distinctiveness in formulation of the name that you want to have a market advantage is critical. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you very much for providing all this additional information on the what are the key things that the entrepreneurs need to take in mind when they are starting. And also, like, for like the hubs in the room today, like how to make sure that they know how to guide entrepreneurs when starting their journey, and in particular in IP. Maybe I'll now go to Moye and ask her, like, from her experience also in working with like several entrepreneurs through her law firm as well, what do you think are the limits of IP protection? And also, what are some key risks that you might have like seen when working with entrepreneurs as well? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the question. Are there any limits to IP protection? I would generally say that I doubt that they are. However, there's sufficient evidence that shows that there are more risks that startups would face if they carry on business without any or insufficient IP protection at all. Arguably, intellectual property is basically the most important aspect for startups. Ignore it, and then the consequences are quite dire. From my experience, well, in Nigeria, with dealing with entrepreneurs, the first thing we tend to do is guide them as to what is available to them legally. For example, the Nigerian legal space has a distinct number of laws. We don't have one particular law that caters to all sorts of every type of IP right. We have several. I'm not going to go into legalese now, but we're talking about the Copyright Act, the Patents and Designs Act, and the Trademarks Act, basically. It would generally cover all the different types. Half the time we've met with lots of entrepreneurs that have sub-stories, and I call it sub-stories because their stories mostly hinge on ideas or innovations that were shared with third parties before it became protectable property. So they found that they've lost out on potential monies that they could have kept in-house if they had taken the needful step to protect their rights under the different laws available in Nigeria. For example, there's I will try not to call any names. So there's a startup that we've dealt with in the previous time who was a little concerned because of how far they had gone in creating a product. They'd gone about 70% through when they decided they wanted to get their IP registered. Of course, as soon as we started, we realized, wait, it's not an original idea. It cannot go on. There's other people who have registered this idea and so on. Of course, at that point in time, it's needless to say the amount of devastation that ensued because one, there was money lost, there was time lost, resources that were lost. So what we usually advise is at inception, right? Look towards registering your IP in whatever form it is. For example, the Copyright Act would protect original literature, music. It is, and in the tech industry, for example, it would protect the original source codes for building that website or web page and so on. Some people, because of the cost, as the previous speakers have mentioned, some people are unable to just jump in and get the copyrights immediately because, as you'll agree with me, a lot of startups struggle for funding, right? So what we usually do and advise them at that point in time is you may want to start with having contractual agreements as to, so that it's clear, just like Professor Sodipo said, on who owns the app, on the website, especially if you're dealing with developers to build an app or a website for you. Then as soon as you have sufficient funding, you want to upgrade that because the copywriter generally take care of that for you. Same with patents and design. Again, without going into so much legalese, we find that a lot of people ignore the design part of their of the startup process. Basically, industrial design would generally protect colors, shapes, and the lines, whatever, of the unique features of your product or innovation, right? Think of the shape of an Apple iPhone, right? It's distinct to Apple. The thing is, for patents, we usually ask that you, sorry, for industrial design, we usually ask that you are certain that the design that is registered is only for aesthetic purposes, because that is the only way you can register it. It has nothing to do with functionality. Think about a fan, for example. A fan will have blades. The blades go towards the functionality of the fan. Therefore, you cannot register that. However, if that fan blade was distinct with a certain feature, a certain color, then you can register that. Now, lots of startups we've found have ignored that, but then we find that later on, say in the long term, you find that it's something that if they had registered, would keep them as a unique brand, separate from all other companies running, so other businesses in that field. I could go on and on. I don't know if you want me to stop now, if I have more time, because it goes down to patents and trademarks. I know some of the other speakers have already spoken on those. So yes, there are no limits. I do not think there are limits, but rather there are lots of risks involved if you do not get any IP protection.
Thank you very much. And I think that provides also a very good view of also like the types of entrepreneurs that our hubs might be protecting. So you mentioned like sectors such as like music, tech, other like type of like creative industries maybe as well. So it's very important also for the hubs in the room today to think based on like the sectors that you're supporting, like the entrepreneurs that you're supporting, like how can you best like help them to protect? Is it like about the code? Is it about like the design? How is that they can make sure that they support the entrepreneurs on this? So this was like a first round of questions that we had with regards to IP and entrepreneurship, and we've got a lot of ideas from the panelists about like how to protect at the very or how to think about like at the very idea stage, as mentioned at the beginning, like what is an idea and what is actually like an executed idea, and how what's the difference with regards to IP. Lucia provided us like 5 reasons to get into IP protection, and also like she introduces us a little bit about the WIPO system, and we discussed also about the ownership and the importance of recognizing the ownership of like this ideas, and then also we just like mentioned like the risks linked to not being protected for the entrepreneurs. So we now have like a second round where we will focus more on like the IP protection and the specific role of hubs when supporting entrepreneurs. And for that, I have my amazing co-moderator here. So I'll leave the floor to Tessie and to our panelists as well.
Thank you so much. This has been really interesting so far, and I hope everyone is taking something out of every speaker. I mean, both AfriLabs and ITC, we have a network of hardworking, innovative entrepreneurs and startups, our hubs. I mean, that was the reason why, you know, we organized this webinar, to just share the importance of intellectual property rights at every stage. I mean, it cannot be overemphasized. Yeah, so thank you again. Thank you, all speakers. So, Odun, I have a question. Your first answer, you said IP is expensive. So what do you think the best approach is on how hubs can partner with IP experts, law firms, you know, to support entrepreneurs better protect their rights at a reduced price, or, you know, what do you think the best approach is?
Thanks, Tessie. I'm fortunate and privileged to be wearing both hats, right? In fact, multiple hats, not just 2. I am an entrepreneur myself. I'm a service provider to entrepreneurs, and I also work with a hub. So some of the things I will say will indict me as well as hubs, as a hub leader. So as a service provider, we've actually, as a law firm, we have partnered with a number of hubs in providing discounted services to the entrepreneurs, whether it's startup or scale-ups. But it's interesting to see that most times when hubs approach us or we even speak with them, we hardly put IP protection on the table. Usually what we're talking about is maybe company registrations or documentation. And considering, we're looking at startups, you're looking at creatives, innovations, IP should actually be an integral part of what you're protecting. It's only, with my experience, we've partnered with I think we have partnerships about 9 to 10 hubs, and it's only one of them that we actually have specific arrangements on IP protection. It's not something that usually comes to the table, and based on their relationship, we've worked with them on patent registration and also trademark registration, giving them discounted services. So I think that this is something that most hubs could emulate. Have a deliberate policy on how you can support the entrepreneurs with protecting their IP. A common thread, that's resonated, that it is expensive, and it is expensive because it's very valuable. Your IP is arguably the most valuable part of what you're building as an entrepreneur. So if there can be some form of enlightenment educationally and then financial support in protecting this IP, it will go a long way. And depending on the stage or the sector and the stage at which the of entrepreneurs that the hubs target, they're different. IP protection rights are valuable. So for a hub and I hope it's okay to give examples just on top of my head, I'm naming hubs, like Assembly Hub that I know that works with creatives and designers. You probably want to look at things, partnerships on industrial design, partnerships on, copyright, things for creatives. And for a hub that works with hardware, maybe like GE hardware, you want to look at partnerships on patents, on how you can help, how you can support your entrepreneurs to on affordable IP protection. And trademark, like Professor Shodipo said, resonates across all entrepreneurs. That's something, and trademark is one of the most expensive because it has to be done in categories. I don't want to use legalese and talk about classes, but it's done in categories, depending, let me say sector categories. And you have to, if you're not protected in a sector category, so I'll use an example. So we are DIY law, and if DIY law is protected only in legal, someone else can actually use DIY law for fashion if you don't protect it in fashion as well. So it becomes expensive when you pay for each of these classes. So in what manner can hubs help support this? And also policymaking, is there a way we can approach as a hub, as a body, approach policymakers on what discounts or what I know that in some jurisdictions, when you do in one class, when you protect your trademark in one class, subsequent classes are then a bit cheaper. But for a place like Nigeria, it's the same price for each class, no matter how many classes you register. So, things like this are where hubs can help make it easier for entrepreneurs to explore their IP protection.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. I mean, one would not have thought you have to protect your IP at every sector. You just think, oh, if I protect my IP as a legal firm, it's protected all around. But okay, that's Moya. You made mention of protecting tech entrepreneurs, tech innovations. With the rise of technology in the world and in Africa, including app development and just finding solutions to problems, and seeing how most of our hubs are tech-based. What is important to communicate to tech entrepreneurs with regards to IP protection, like let's say at the very first stage?
Okay, that's really simple. 1, talk to your lawyer. 2, refer to one. The reason I say this is it's essential that hubs get proper legal advice to understand what level of protection is needed for their business. A lot of startups are not aware, just like Longest said, that you can use multiple types of IP rights to protect a product or an invention or think I'm looking for the most common brand. Think of Coca-Cola, for example. There's several, right? There's the brand Coca-Cola in itself is a trademark. Yeah, the soda, the actual soda has a trade secret. Yeah, right. That's a separate IP, right? Which is generally, I'm not going to go into that. It's not generally, there's no law that protects that in Nigeria. However, there are several ways to protect IPs with, say, especially in the tech industry, you might want to protect your algorithms, all those things that are secrets to your organization. So there are other ways that your lawyer would advise you as to how to manage those confidential information. Back to Coca-Cola, look at the packaging pack, for example. All the arts, the logo in there, it's branded, so it's this trademark in there, and also the shape of the bottle in itself. There's design and patent on that as well. So that's why I said the first thing you want to do is speak to your lawyer. Essentially, the first things we do here is there are 4 important steps that we like to advise hubs to take, especially in the tech, because I mean, you could, with the rise in technology, like you said, Tessie, things change quite quickly. Firstly, if you want to have IP discussions very early, you want to plan for it, have a budget for it. You might even want to create an IP strategy with your lawyer as to how to deal with it. I like to say from short to mid to long term. I say long term basically because if you think about companies like BlackBerry, for example. Now, they don't at the moment have the as huge a market share as they used to have before. However, they are thriving very well because they are getting lots of revenue by leasing their licenses to other bigger brands to use. So with startups, if from the beginning you're thinking about protecting your patents, you're thinking, okay, in the long term, if I want to sell my company to, say, a venture capitalist has interest in me and wants to take my company up, you are giving your startup the value, right? You're increasing the value that it has. So one of the first things we do is let's have that conversation early, have an IP strategy from short to medium term. With tech startups, it goes without saying, you want to be certain from the onset that you're not infiltrating on anybody's IP. You're obtaining the necessary licenses, if at all, if you want to carry on a chosen product. Secondly, just like the previous speakers have said, the next thing you want to do is you want to register your IP under whatever type, and then maybe several different classes, right? The danger here is that if you don't register your IP, there are severe repercussions that could cripple your business. Again, without saying, startups are generally looking for how to get lots of money. So you may want to do it in stages. If you think back to 2016, there was a MyPhone MyPhone got an injunction against Xiaomi, right? The owners of the My brand in Asia, because they wanted to sell My devices in Nigeria, right? Now, if at the time Xiaomi had done like a proper due diligence, you would have found out that, well, the My brand already exists in Nigeria and it belongs to MyPhone, which ties into what the previous speaker mentioned about the IP being very territorial. It's only valid in the region that you register. So if you want to diversify to, say, another country, say Kenya, you're obviously going to have to register it again. Anyway, I'll try not to go on too much. The third thing that we try to that we advise for hubs, especially tech, because of how volatile it is that you ensure your startup, right? Things change very quickly. It's a lot of times people ignore this. People say, well, it's insurance, I can get through that later. Well, the truth is, in addition to your intellectual property rights, your complete startup needs to be properly insured so that you can protect everything built. If towards the end of the line, it becomes clear that, oh, okay, this this area that you've delved into becomes outdated, or there's another startup that has disrupted something, you have to start again. If you're properly insured, you're not going to lose a lot of money, right? Startups are constantly thinking about tight budgets, so you want to ensure that they can manage their funds accordingly. So generally, a comprehensive business insurance, not just for tech, actually, generally all startups, it's usually advisable. And then fourth, we like to say to startups, yes, we understand that you cannot spend largely to get a full suite of IP protection immediately. However, it's critical to understand what intellectual property is to your business, right? Essentially, it might end up being the biggest value that your company possesses, even at the beginning. So if you're not able to get a full range of all the IP rights just at the beginning, you're not able to register everything, like I said before, you can do it in stages, have several agreements, have several NDAs that will protect you, or so that as you grow in the business, you can start to copyright or trademark as you proceed. The truth is that intellectual property theft really is very, it happens a lot. And it's akin to, because it's intangible, it's a lot of people sort of ignore it, right? It is akin to like leaving your office door open at night and allowing someone to come in and take what it is that you've worked so hard for, right? And so what we try to do when we work with these hubs is to ensure that we can protect those intangible assets that you have, so that it helps your business rather than dip your business where it's being infringed upon, or if you find that you've already infringed on somebody's right, now you have to pay damages. We try to ensure that, you know, you're protected from all that. So as it relates to the first thing to do for startups, I think these are the main four things that I would give any startup any day. So in summary, like I said, you want to plan early, have an IT budget and an IP strategy as well. You want to register your IP rights. You want to insure your business. You want to prioritize on your IP spending. And I'm tempted to add a third one, which is you want to be clear, sorry, fifth one, which is you want to be clear on the vision of your startup. So if from the beginning you have a plan to know, oh, this is where the business is looking to face in another 3 to 5 years, then you want to plan from the very beginning, so that if you're looking to sell in another 3 years, you're positioned in such a way that your startup has requisite value. I think I'll stop here. Thank you.
Oh goodness, we could listen to you. We could listen to you go on and on and on, and just sharing this really interesting, very specific, important information with all of us. Thank you so much, Moya. Lucia, as Moya rightly said, you know, your IP has to be registered per country. You know, if you're registered in a country doesn't mean you're safe in that country. And in your first question, you spoke about the Madrid system of protection. What are some key basic concepts that hubs should know in order to share knowledge and guide entrepreneurs?
First, the most important thing is, like, in the mind of people, there is that IP is for multinational companies, and is not. Is very, very, very important for startups. So we think about Coca-Cola, Apple, Nestle. So this year, the 26th of April, WIPO, the World IP Day, focus on SMEs, so intellectual properties and SMEs. And I'm gonna share with you a video where you have some examples, and I wanna share with you an example of a company, an SME, which is from Kenya. So as you know, all of you know that Kenya is well known for famous runners. So this brought a little company to found ENDA. It was Nabalayo Osembi Onbati who have found ENDA. ENDA is the first company of running shoes in Kenya. You can just check on Google. And this company developed running shoes for runners all around the world. And some of of you may know, I just learned it very recently, that enda in Swahili means go, is the way when you cheer your favorite athlete, and sometimes when runners are arriving to the end, they use it. So they registered this trademark. And they wanted to do really innovative shoes. So it's like, some of one know is nice. Benson, he knows the shoes, nice. So what they do is before launching any shoes, they think about potential IP rights they need. So after what Moye has said, what do you think these are the IP rights? I mean, there are no wrong answers, but you can write it in the chat. What do you think a shoe has, like a running shoe has as IP right? So you can write it in the chat. I will give a look. So no answer. Fabric, good, very good. Is it design, perfect, very good. Yeah, nice. Materials can be branded by their design, very nice. Well, all of this. So for example, when we say the design can be protected as an industrial design, but it can also be a patent. For example, if it's a very innovative design with a technology that makes the feet have a better accommodation for running. Then we have the trademarks. The trademarks are like identifiers. So they allow people, so when I say enda, immediately someone say, yeah, I know, I have a pair of them. So it's make you differentiate in service from a company to another. And so what is important for me, what is important for you to know, for you to transmit to the SMEs is like the IP is the path for the future. And it's not only for big companies, it's the path for little SMEs to be known all over the world, and is a way to preserve the business. So from the beginning, the startup need to think to factor IP are something that is critical to the success, and they have to identify, as Moye was saying, like the different IP rights or IP that can be protected, maybe begin for the most important and to identify the essentials and protect them, because these give a lot of value to the company, as they were saying. So that will be all for my part.
Thank you so much. And that was really engaging. Our attendees, it was really engaging. Thank you so much. We're running out of time, so I'll just quickly ask Professor Bankole, with your experience in the education sector as a former dean and professor, and also an IP expert, how can hubs better collaborate with universities or schools to provide IP support?
Well, in the last 8 years in Nigeria, the National Office of Technology Acquisition and Promotion has helped to start up technology transfer offices in over 40 universities. So hubs may work with the technology transfer offices of the universities with a view to taking ideas from the idea stage to the marketplace. So there is a lot of innovation that is occurring in research institutes and universities all over Africa. The issue for most of them is how do they commercialize them? And this is one advantage which hubs will then have. And so there must be a lot of collaboration. And I think one of the problems too is that most people in research centers and universities, they just want to provide solutions to problems that may not necessarily be attractive or important in the marketplace. And so hubs may be able to work with them to say, look, these are the kind of solutions, these are the kind of issues that the market is looking to resolve. So, because if you don't, and you have solutions to problems that are not important, then those ideas will probably never get to the marketplace. And if I may add, another issue which hubs should regard as important, particularly as has been stressed in terms of working with your legal advisors and so on. It has been stressed that you need to have a budget. Sometimes it's because you don't have a budget that it's difficult to then want to spend money. But if you do have a budget, or if you at least approach your advisors, they may also be able to advise that, okay, what you're working on may have been anticipated by the market in the sense that it may not be new. But if you do this particular thing or this particular thing, some years back, I recall in a client had a computer mouse cleaner, and he wanted to obtain a patent, that's an innovation. And we found out that there were 4 patents internationally on this. And so we looked at the patents and the art, the prior art, and advised, okay, why don't you change yours this way? Why don't you add this? By the time you do that, you may be able to, yours may be novel, and you'll be able to get a patent. And that's what happens. So sometimes work may be anticipated, but you may be able to do some changes that will still make then the apps or whatever work you're working on or innovation to be new in the market, sufficient to get protection.
Thank you so much, Professor Bankole. This is really interesting. So yes, we don't have a lot of time. We still have our question and answer session. Please drop your questions. We'll get to that next after we go around to all our panelists for just one final sentence, quickly, a minute or less. So Longe, or do you want to go first?
Sure. It can be emphasized that the IP is one of the most valuable assets that a startup can have. So what I would like to encourage hubs to do is find strategic solutions and strategic means of providing the support, of communicating the value and providing the support to financially to both protect and financially exploit, and maximize the potential of this IP.
Thank you so much. Moya, do you want to go next?
Sure. Just like what has been said, I think that it's important for hubs to be aware, firstly, of the different intellectual property rights that are available to them, and do take steps in order to properly register themselves. It's better to prevent than to deal with the after effects. So that would be my last and final advice for hubs here. Thank you.
So yes, basically get an in-house legal team or a lawyer.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Lucia, any last word, advice?
I was mute, I'm sorry. For me, the most important message is for SMEs, registering IP rights is the first step in protecting their commercial interests. So doing this internationally, for example, with WIPO is a safe way to protect it abroad, and an integral part of any successful global business strategy. So the registration, as it was said before, it provides legal certainty, and it's also reinforced the position of the right holder, for example, in a case of litigation. So the importance of registering the IP in your country and internationally, that will be my takeaway.
Thank you. Professor Bankole.
Yes, it's important that you build capacity as hubs. Regulations, laws on intellectual property change from time to time. If not in your nation, you may be changing in the neighboring nations where your products or services are in demand. And so if you don't acquaint yourself with this and seek protection, then you may be losing out. Recently, in Nigeria, for instance, a Plant Variety Act was passed. I mean, we've been lobbying for this for over 25 years. Now, the law has been passed. So you may, if you are in that agri sector, you may be able to have protection now. So it's important to keep building capacity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Nora, do you want to take over the question and answer session?
Yes, we do have one key question about the question is that if there's any psychometric scale available on deciding how to determine what best to go about intellectual property domain. So I'll let our speakers respond, but otherwise I might let also the hub expand a little bit more on this question. Do you need further clarification, or is any panelist happy to take this question as it is?
Well, I would say there, at least at WIPO, I don't know, maybe country-wise there is not a psychometric scale. It would be very, very nice and very easy, but it doesn't exist yet to determine whether there is, but there is a department, I'm gonna give the link after, there is a department called Intellectual Property and SMEs, which helps SMEs to figure it out. So there is, there are advisors or as Moya say, lawyers, but so that you can find them, but it would be very easy, but it's not that easy.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. I've allowed Jamit also to unmute in case there needs to be further clarification, or if any other of our speakers want to add on what Lucia mentioned.
Hello everyone. My name is Stanley. Stanley from Jamit, co-founder of Jamit. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Awesome. So why I asked was, to understand that are there attitudes, behavioral patterns, to decide if how you should protect your IP address. Like someone stated earlier in the conversation that you can have an IP in Nigeria and it can't really be saved, say in the US, right? So understanding that psychometrics and getting to know what best way to actually be covered on all grounds and not let any loophole get involved in that situation. That's what I'm trying to understand. How do I understand the behavior on, mask myself properly and know that my intellectual properties are properly taken care of?
Well, if I may just say something.
Please go ahead, and then I know that, yeah.
Okay, so I think it's important to try and identify your possible export markets. And the export markets, there's some where your products or services may actually be reproduced. Depending on the nature of the technology, there's some, assuming you have a lot of demand in Africa, maybe most of those countries do not have the capacity to manufacture your product. So you may not want to spend money in protecting your rights in all those countries. But in key markets where your products could be reproduced, then you need to invest in those places in terms of registration in those countries.
In addition to what Prof said as well, you know, in addition to reproduction, you also want to look at your growth plans. If you're gonna, especially if you're like venture funded, I'm sure that like you have a pitch deck, you have projections, and in your pitch deck, you're thinking, what markets am I scaling into? So as you're thinking of the markets, your 5-year projections, your 2-year projections, 10-year projections, you want to then consider also protecting in those markets, because those are markets you're likely to enter. And you then want to protect yourself against the competition, or in order to properly attain value from your IP. Well, I don't think that there's like a standardized test to follow. So it's just looking at your growth plans and like your production plans, like Prof rightly said.
Perfect.
So I will have, if I'm allowed to share my screen.
I don't think you are in the webinar.
No.
But yeah, I don't know, Jamit, if that answered your question as well.
Yes, it did.
Okay.
It made perfect sense. Thank you guys for the.
Okay. It's just that we have some databases to compare brands designs worldwide in different countries. So you can put your brand and have an idea if the brand exists or is already protected, I don't know, in the United States or in Europe. So you have an idea if you want to expand to Europe and the United States, is maybe a good step to have before registering Nigeria, know that it could be protected there.
Perfect.
Sorry, I missed.
Sorry. So
I missed the last thing you said about that. You're mute, just in case.
I'm gonna send you, it's called the Global Brand Database. There is the Global Design Database. There are databases available at WIPO with different countries. So you can check if, for example, you wanna register a trademark for the moment in Nigeria, but you wanna see if it's available still in the European Union or in another country, in Kenya, for example, or in Uruguay, I don't know, with the United States. So you can check it and you can see worldwide if this mark is already registered. And if another trademark, there is a lot with design, with patents, so it could be useful for you to have. This is a free resource offered by WIPO.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, that would be helpful.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Jamit, also for like asking that question. We do have one last question that, but I think it's more related on like the role of hubs and how can they be more sustainable. So like the question is about like how can hubs be rewarded for the time and effort involved in helping the startups. Maybe this is a question that I can take as well as the ITC hub, but maybe also Tessie, since you also work quite a lot with hubs. I think that the main reason why we wanted to have this session today is because we've seen that in many ecosystems, most of the support is really like focused on the early stages, on what is entrepreneurship, how to take your idea forward. But there's not so much support and with regards to IP protection, with regards to law, with regards to how to build your team, HR guidance, a little bit more on the support on the growth stage as well, like building those growth plans that were mentioned here today as well. So I think that this is something that like hubs need to start thinking more about, because this will also contribute to their sustainability. The more services, the more unique services that you offer to the entrepreneurs, the more that you can like market your services, and then you can also get rewarded for them, or rewarded, or like get like the proper like compensation for it. So I think we've had like other sessions where we discuss the sustainability of hubs, but I think like including support such as IP protection or like guidance, or like these partnerships that were discussed between like hubs and IP protection law firms, those type of like services are the ones that add value and like really like make the difference when compared to other hubs that might be offering support to entrepreneurs. I don't know, Tessie, if you have like something to add here, or also any of our panelists. Yeah, that's it on my side. I'm not sure if Tessie's like connection is good because she's like frozen on my screen. Any other comment? Otherwise, yeah, Tessie.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That's okay. No, no worries. We lost you for a second.
Yeah.
But you're back. Happy that you're back.
Okay. Okay. Thank you to our panelists. This has been really interesting, and maybe we might have another session. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe. But this has been really, really interesting, and very educative and mind-opening. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all, and really to the panelists as well for like all your inputs today. And just to all our hubs participating here, thank you all also for being here. We will send you a quick survey so that you can like let us know what you thought about the session as well. And we hope to see you soon in the next session as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.